Welcome to the Village Board work session. Today is Monday, December 11, a work session at 7 p.m. First item on our list is discussion with the police department regarding the communications upgrade project. We have a number of memos about that. Chief Grutzner is on remotely. Hello, Chief.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello, Chief. Give us the drill.
Okay, so I've been before the board a number of times for what seems like an almost interminable period of time discussing our communication system. We are in the midst of an upgrade on a number of different levels. Some of that is because of the nature of communications. Some of that is the nature of technology. In general, we have been partnering with a number of other agencies to try to make our communications modern and functional and be both sufficient for our needs on a day-to-day basis, as well as in case of an emergency or a critical incident. In addition, we have to consider the need for us to communicate during larger events in which we are assisted or assisting other police agencies or other disciplines, be that fire or EMS. And so this is an ongoing conversation we're having not only here in the village, but also county and statewide. So at this time today, you'll notice a number of agenda items that are on there for your consideration. First and foremost, we have an agreement with the county police to upgrade an antenna that is located on Village Hall. That antenna controls a system which we call the MARS radio station or radio communications. MARS stands for Multiple Agency Response or Multiple Agency Radio Response System. The idea is that the county police controls a number of mutual aid channels. We have been upgrading. We used to have an old hotline system, which literally was an old phone that was in headquarters. It connected to all the other police agencies in Westchester County. And so if we had something going on and we needed help, we would pick up that phone and every police department in the county would hear us giving the situation and what we needed. That has been changed and adapted and upgraded over time. One of the ways in which we operate now is through this MARS system, which again, like I said, has mutual aid frequencies on there. The antenna, there's currently an antenna on there on the roof of the building, and we are just agreeing for them to upgrade that to a more modern system, more modern antenna on the roof.
And is that a significant venture involving a crane and all that?
Well, they were on the roof once before, so they know the particular struggles that our architecture presents. We expect, they probably will need to get up there with a bucket truck or crane or something like that. We don't expect there to be the need for scaffolding or anything like that, but they will need to access the roof to do that work. Secondly, you'll see in addition to the county police on a similar but separate project, the county police has offered to install mutual aid radios into our frontline patrol cars. They are absorbing the cost of these radios. Again, I don't want to get too technical into the how they work and things, but there are basically 3 bands that police radios transmit on, and in Westchester County, all 3 of them are in use. These radios will bring all 3 bands together so that we could potentially, even if, for instance, we're on a 700-800 megahertz band and there's another department that's on a UHF band or VHF band, we'd be able to speak to them. So that radio provides that functionality. The county is providing these radios at no cost except for the installation for us. And what that will give the ability to do is it will allow for the officers in the cars to be hearing in real time and transmitting in real time what their information is. We don't now have to relay from our officer to the desk through the hotline or through the MARS system to other agencies who then have to relay it to their units on the road. So it's a much more efficient, better responses. It's more safe for the officers and civilians and everybody involved. Again, the county is providing us with those radios, and we're just providing the installation of those radios. So we're excited about that. Again, that's an MOU that you'll see on tonight's agenda.
So those radios are in addition to the radios already in the cars. Is
Correct.
that right? And
Yes.
there's room for that? I mean, does that
Yes.
involve a big deal
So
to find space for them and pick them up?
a lot of the hardware, the actual radio part is actually in the trunk out of the way. It's just sort of the faceplate that needs to be there. So, you know, believe me, the inside of the cars are crowded, but we're sure that we'll be able to find a space for them. And again, the functionality that they're going to provide is really, really helpful and definitely worth it.
Okay.
All right. And then lastly, the MTA police. So as we've discussed, I've brought up at many of the quarterly updates for the board. The MTA police has a network. Their radio transmissions operate on two separate platforms. One is the 700-800 megahertz, like a typical trunked radio system would operate, but it also operates on LTE. The reason I bring that up is this project that the MTA is undertaking now will be to bring only a radio antenna to the village. What this will provide for us, so our plan has been, I believe I've discussed this before, is to join the MTA a few years ago, came around, and basically they wanted to provide for all the partner agencies, all the agencies in Westchester County that have assisted them over the years with the opportunity to come on this very I'm stumbling over the word, but it's a very robust network that they have established. And so we took the opportunity to do some testing. We were excited about the possibility, but did not see that we were going to get as much improved coverage as we had hoped. We talked to MTA, and they are now offering to put an antenna on a site here in the village. We have talked to other agencies who had MTA put an antenna on a site in their municipality, and it greatly increases coverage, not only generally when officers are out on patrol, but also penetration into buildings. So one of the challenges that all radio communications face is, how do you get inside buildings that are made of brick and concrete? And the increase, this new this new antenna is going to greatly increase our ability to penetrate into buildings with all the new construction, with school buildings, with any sort of large, strongly made building. We're going to get much greater penetration. So that process is ongoing. We've been working very closely with the MTA and other representatives to make sure that we follow the process correctly. But we are looking forward to that antenna site hopefully becoming operational within the next few months. That would allow us to transition from our current radio system, which is end of life. We're not able to find replacement parts for our system. We've experienced outages of our current system. So we're looking to replace that with jumping onto the MTA's system. We won't share a frequency with the MTA. We'll still have our own frequency. We'll actually have more opportunities to do more things with radio communications for us to do this. So we are excited about that opportunity. Today, on today's agenda, you'll see the creation of a capital fund and moving some ARPA funds into that. Those purchases will be for the portable radios, which each officer will be issued a portable radio, as well as the infrastructure inside of headquarters to support the new system. We had originally worked through the process, expecting to have a budget of around $300,000 for this project. We are currently trending well below that. This 235 may be the extent of the money that we need. We may have to come back from some other incidentals, but we are confident that we're going to remain well under budget on this project. That will bring our police communications not only up to date, but will make it viable into the foreseeable future.
So, Chief, on that memo that Jesse Woolman provided, Eastern Radio Portable Radios and Interface New York State contract, that's 183,000. Zetron consult for communications desk, 30,811.
Mhm.
What are they doing? I
So-
assume that's more than just consulting. Are they
Yes.
actually?
No,
what are they
there's
doing?
there's hardware installation involved in that. There's some infrastructure improvements that come along with that. So the portable radios, in order for us to do things like record the transmissions, log them, a lot of the metadata that goes into the functionality that these radios have has to be supported by either hardware or software or infrastructure improvements. And so that's what we're getting through the Zetron console.
And does this involve like sawing apart the console and rebuilding it, or is it?
You mean physically inside the building?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not challenging, I'm just wondering.
No, mostly it's really so there is definitely hardware that'll need to come in. They have these things down, so that's pretty small. We just redid our communications room, I want to say about 5 years
I recall
ago.
that.
Yep. So we do have space. The good thing about the current system we have is that it's much easier to remove old equipment and install new equipment. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but the new equipment always seems to come in smaller. So we just find ways to make sure that it can fit inside the space that we need. But much of the operations that we run, this is some hardware, but a lot of the improvements go towards the software and the backup. So yeah, there will be some very minor adjustments we expect we'll have to make to the communications area.
Did you have a thought on the question of how long? I mean, obviously, that's not a fully answerable question, but this is a forward-looking investment, obviously.
Yes, this is the idea. One of the great things about this system as we move forward is its ability to be updated. The equipment is designed to last. The radios, like the portables, for instance, are built to be long lasting. There's always improvements in technology, but there's no reason to believe that anything will become obsolete anytime soon.
Okay, and obviously there are a bunch of procedural steps to clear the decks to do this MTA antenna of the water tanks, but what sort of a schedule is that envisioned to be on?
So they are MTA is not ready to break ground yet, but they are moving in that direction. They're hopeful. So it is a network, so they do sort of have a sort of a timeline laid out for not only our potential project, but also other potential projects. So it's hard to say, but we would expect to hopefully be operational springtime, early summer.
Okay. And how about all the rest of the radios in the cars and the mobile units and all that? What?
Yep, a lot of that's dependent on the county's timeline. I know they're moving forward on it. I don't know that they've taken delivery, say, of the mobile units or how they're going to roll that out. We have not gotten a timeline on the antenna work. So, but again, those things should not necessarily have too many hurdles to go through in order to do this.
Okay. All right. Other questions, anybody? We are moving some of the ARPA funds to pay for this resolution to do that tonight.
So we have a resolution to create the capital account for this project and then authorization to allocate funding to it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
All right. All right. Next item on our agenda was a conversation with Superintendent of Parks and Recreation regarding the proposed playground replacement projects. Are you there, Mike?
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can hear you. Yes.
Great, great. How's everybody doing?
Good. How about you?
Good, good. So,
So fill us in here. We have that PowerPoint presentation. If you want, I could share the screen.
That's a good idea.
yeah, that'd be great. That'd be fine.
Okay. All right. I have done so.
All right, can you go to the first slide?
I am on the first slide, I think. That is, the first slide is the title.
Yeah, I'm
First
sorry,
slide.
you are.
With, yes,
So I've met with the playground discussion group and committee that's helped put this together. Just real quick on them, it's been a great group with a lot of different ideas, but ultimately all coming to kind of the same common ground because, with a lot of different, opinions on playgrounds and the number of many different things you could do, this, could take a long time. This group has worked really well together and to get us to where we're at, which is close to the finish where we can start looking to secure funds and start planning out when to do the build. So the first couple slides are the design that we have so far. We're just about complete. I was hoping to have a tweak to this from our representative. He did not get it to me today, but what you're seeing as far as the playground here and what he is going to send me, there is no significant changes. There's a couple little add-ons and substitutions. And as soon as I have that, I can forward that along to you guys. Some of that stuff could slightly affect the pricing, most likely bring it down a little bit. But basically, this playground is a little bit of a mix of some of the old school, like platform, slide, and some of the new school climbing features, net structure, basically connective play. But, one of the things I like and the group likes is, there is a lot of play area, a lot of creative play area. We also have some sensory areas on this side. You can see the right by the green side, there's two green looking like drums, and they're a sensory like bongo drum. We also have one of those pipes where you speak into it and you can hear it from another pipe in another location. I don't think you can see it on this slide.
yes,
And if you go to the smaller structure, which I think is maybe the next slide. Yep. There's a little like storefront, and you can see in the background there is that tube I was talking about where you talk into it is in the back corner, and where you can listen to it is right by the entrance where you're kind of coming up the stairs.
so this is where you talk into it?
Yeah, that's one.
Where
And
my
then if
cursor
you look
is,
at
yeah.
Yep, and then go to the front of the playground. Right on the post is where the other one is.
Oh, right here.
Yep, right there. Yep.
And what are these little mushroom gizmos?
Those are just steps.
Just steps?
It's a different way to climb up.
Okay, and this is invent your own retail store here.
Future tenant of Wheeler Avenue.
Okay.
Yep. And this is just an overview. With the overview, just, kind of an above view, the outline around the playground basically gives you an idea of the full area that has to be, so there has to be so much area off of each of these structures without any obstruction. So that just gives you an idea of, the space we have and the amount of equipment and the amount of playground that we're putting in to this space that fits nicely.
Okay. All right.
So this playground and what I'm showing you, the playground equipment itself is $146,210. That's not taking account the Sourcewell contract discount that we will get, which will be an 8% discount. So
we may
we'll
save
have that
more than $10,000 off that, right?
Correct. That on this price right now, it's $10,000. When we finalize that, it'll still be 8% because I believe the contract is anything over 100,000 is an 8% discount on equipment.
Okay.
And as you can see, I've laid out some of the other expenses, the mulch that we'll need that will be required for the first time for this playground, concrete for the footings, an additional build supervisor. So this is a the plan right now is to do a community build. All of our playgrounds in the past, all three of the current ones were community builds. Mario was a part of all three of them. I believe Mario is actually on. I don't think he's has permission to talk, but I think he's on here. So he's been a big help as far as
Yes.
talking about community builds and future playgrounds. So we would save quite a bit of money by doing a community build. Both this playground group and the Park and Rec Advisory Board believe that together we can get the word out and get a good number of people to come out and support and help build. The plan would be to potentially do this on a weekend. And then the only other additional costs, there might be a couple other things that I can iron down, but some parks overtime will also be allotted for this. Ideally, maybe by the end of the week, I will have our final design and final quote. Like I said, we're not talking about major changes. I did give you guys a range there, really just in case, but I don't think we're going to be anywhere near 165. I actually think we potentially could be a slightly bit lower than what I'm showing you. So I'm hoping I'll finalize that, give you the latest design and the quote, and with your blessing, we can potentially move forward, get a PO in, because the sooner we can put this in, the sooner we can get on the schedule to build. We're on pace if in the next, I'd say right around the new year, we get all this in and finalized, we could be on the schedule for a build in late April, late April, which would be perfect on our end as far as what we have going on the park side and what my guys have coming up for the summer. So that is our current timeline, dependent on how you guys feel about what I just presented.
So it looks good. I'm thinking maybe this tall piece is tall enough for a police antenna. What do you think? If it's a community build, does that involve digging the holes and pouring the footings?
Yep. So we would do that. We would take down the current playgrounds, and what we would do most likely in the winter is, as long as we get the go ahead and we're good to go, we would potentially start taking down the Nanahagan playground this winter. And then yes, with the help of our rep, he would lay it all out for us. We would dig the holes and pour the footings. The footings will have to be done that weekend of the build.
Okay. And how many people might it take on a volunteer basis to build this in one weekend?
Talking with Mario, I know I don't have a specific number, but talking to Mario about the past, and actually we have a couple people on our group whose parents were involved in the previous builds, which is pretty neat. And some of them may be on the Zoom because I did let them know I was coming on tonight. So I don't know exactly how many people. We would put together some language to, advertise, hey, we're looking for volunteers, probably do it, I would say probably schedule like 2 time slots where we need help with specific jobs. And honestly, probably the more the merrier, but I would try to iron down an idea of how many we would need, and do maybe some sort of a sign up for that.
I recall the community build at Westcora the last time, and there was quite a good crowd of folks there. So,
a couple of questions, Mike. One, so you said you're going to take down the existing equipment sometime in the winter. Are you going to put some sort of sign up so that people know what's coming? Was my first simple question.
I think once we get to that point where we're a go, I would blast it out. We can put some signage up at Nanahagan, and then obviously when we take it down, we would fence off the whole area until it's time to open up the new one.
Okay, I think like
but we wouldn't have any exposed holes or anything.
And then
I'm sorry,
I was wondering about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I've interrupted you. Go ahead.
The challenges of Zoom, right? I was wondering also about getting the information out. It would be great to have information about the fact that there was this group that helped put the concept together and a little bit of the brainstorming that they did, and obviously images and so on. I think it would be nice to get that information out to the community once everything is finalized.
Yeah, we could do that. I think we could do almost like a newsletter on the members of the group, the discussions that were had, kind of the process we took with the new pictures of our final design and the time frame, and maybe use that also as a tool for, hey, we need volunteers to help with the community build.
I think that would be great. Yeah, I have some community members in mind who might be helpful. Eric, I was curious, is any of the recreation fund from new development helping to pay for this?
Yep, so we're gonna have two funding streams for this. Former Assemblyman Avenatti actually secured $275,000 for upgrades to all three of our playgrounds. So when you divvy that up, that's about $92,000 per playground. So we'll allocate a portion, and then the balance will be covered by the rent fees.
Fantastic.
So.
That's great.
I think it's just important also to note, Mike, I commend you and your groups. I know how hard you guys worked. I know your meetings were long. My wife is on that committee, so.
She's getting back at you,
Yeah,
Paul.
I was like, wait a minute. But, no, but I was really impressed by, all the volunteers that help have a lot of experience, either working at schools or working with children. And I think that really gives a lot of insight. My wife does school recreational time and playground time, and she watches kids play every day and sees what works. So I think adding all of that and having all those people and just all the different models that you guys went through and all the different, I think you might have gotten rid of a lot of trees with all that paperwork. But I think it's great. You guys really took a lot of time, and I commend you for doing that, because these are great.
We sat here a few years
Thank you.
ago. Michael, we sat here a few years ago, and you were not responsible for this, but we saw a proposal for replacing some playground equipment that one person had put together. And now seeing what you've been able to do with the community tells us that I think this is really the right process, in addition to a very good product.
Yeah, it really has been it was, and I've told the group this, it was better than I expected, because you're a little fearful. You're gonna bring in 8 other people that have opinion on 1,000, like I said, 1,000 different things you could do at a playground. Could take a very long time. This group really worked well together, had a good idea, weren't going astronomical over the top. They were looking for a nice playground that is better than what we had, and that'll be here for a long time, so that hopefully I'm long gone before we're talking about doing new playgrounds.
That's great.
See that? He's convinced the playground will last longer than the chief is convinced that.
He's probably right.
He's probably right. All right, so this looks great, Mike. So in a perfect world, you take down the existing stuff this winter, and sort of come the thaw, could rock and roll. I mean, is the equipment available on that kind of a schedule?
Yeah, so we talked with the reps. If we get our final drawing, our group is all good with what we have, and you guys give me the go ahead. We're still on track that if we get it in a PO that we could make this happen in April.
Great.
All right, good work.
And
Thank you.
again, this just real quick. Again, the group has worked really well together, and they're excited to, even after this, to start looking at the next playgrounds.
Great.
Are they committed to all three? Paul
Yeah.
is groaning. All right, that's great. Thank you, Mike, and thank you for shepherding that and for getting that community group together. Really great. While we have you, can I ask a quick question? Just quick update on Panther Club. You're still at 150 kids all in?
Yeah, each month it fluctuates a couple up and down. So each month, I've been able to add a couple here and there to at the end of each month for the previous month. But yes, we're at about 150 Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, historically, we've never reached that. We're at about 130, I think.
Right. So in essence, it's, within the confines of the way it goes, it's essentially you're at full enrollment, but you can keep working bit by bit through folks who are on the waiting list as other families decide they don't.
Absolutely. I would say yes, exactly. We're at full, and then drips and drabs where we can. We try to work through the wait list. It's a slow go. It's not massive numbers, but every month I'm able to get a couple people here and there to fill in either a day that they needed or a few days that they needed.
Right. All right. Thanks for that. Anybody else have any questions for Mike? Well, we have seized him. All right. Thank you, Mike. Mario's on there somewhere. Thank you, Mario.
Yes, thank you, Mario.
You're welcome, guys.
Okay.
Great
Thank
job,
you.
by the way, on the holiday lights too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure it's true for all of us. Just compliments all the way around about the success of the holiday lights. And so I was going to say in announcements, obviously, that goes back to Kathy Dinkle and her team. Kathy Dinkle pushing that through.
Absolutely.
But Mike and Mario and all of you guys obviously assisted a lot with the outsourced contractor, and it looks great. It was a little hard to carve out the budget for it, but it has delivered, I would say, and easily reaches the value we spent on it. So much appreciated. The Parks and Rec department is rocking.
Thank you.
all.
All right. All right, so we're a little tiny bit ahead of schedule. Just want to give an update on review of the Architectural Review Board stuff. As you know, we went through the review of the rooftop units at 70 Memorial, which was, I think, to my knowledge, the first time in anyone's memory, at least, and maybe in Pleasantville's history, that we have had an appeal to the village board over a decision by the ARB. And I met a week or so ago with Russ Klein and a couple of members of the Planning Commission / ARB after we had made that decision to talk about how that played out and how that felt to them. And I would say that, one clear piece of that, which is not news, is that the Planning Commission's responsibilities and powers are enumerated in state law, and are much clearer. Architectural review boards are more advisory in nature, and we have a village code that we have now all been reacquainted with, because the applicant seeking to appeal the decision brought that back and said, well, here's what your code says, all those elements. So as I said the night we made that vote, it was, I think, clear that we should take a look at whether our enabling code is the right thing. And I certainly think that's ratified by the folks on the ARB. But also in the course of that conversation and with others, the question of whether is there a better way for this to work, to give more clarity to the system, to avoid a circumstance where the ARB feels that their decision was overruled and the rug was pulled out from under them, but also from the standpoint of applicants to provide a clearer and more understandable mechanism for all this. So I've talked to a bunch of people, including a couple of architects. One of them has put me in touch with New Rochelle, which operates in a rather different way. They don't have a regular ARB. They have a review board, primarily architects, not all of them living in New Rochelle, and that's a paid function, although not tremendously expensive. So it's just another way of doing this. But as I might have mentioned when we voted, I was on the ARB many, many moons ago. It was my launch into the world of working on a village board. And in fact, Russ Klein and I served on that board together briefly, and then he left and went to the Planning Commission, and I later did. But I can speak from personal experience, and I don't think it's any different now. it's not as though there are any clear guidelines that say, okay, here's what you're allowed to do, here's what you're not allowed to do. Here is the basis upon which you make a decision, and here are what an applicant's rights are if they don't like what you say. But, you know, what certainly is clear is it's not the ARB's role to design a project, and folks come wanting to do what they want to do, and inevitably it's a little bit of a diplomatic effort to determine how the Architectural Review Board, in their view, can move a proposal in a positive direction. So I say that to say it's quite clear that there are some differences of opinion within the existing ARB about how this should work and the level of involvement folks should have. So what we have done is asked Jennifer Gray, Keenan Bean, to take a look at the enabling legislation for ARBs in other communities and to give us back any information Keenan Bean may have about how this is structured elsewhere and whether it works. And I can also report that Jennifer has said, at least preliminarily, that it's a conversation in many communities, which is to say applicants come wanting to do something and they don't necessarily appreciate being told, change the color, change the roof line, change the materials, all of those things. And on the other side of the coin, board members wish they had something clearer to point to. So certainly the issue of whether an aspect of a project has a negative effect on the neighboring properties, which was a piece of the argument the applicant made in the case of 70 Memorial, is written in our code. And I think it's easy to say, okay, if you wanted to build build a building and paint it, you know, highway safety green, one might be able to make an argument that that would be an eyesore that would negatively affect everybody else. As we struggled through the decision we had to make, it's I think also clear that there isn't any means of assessing whether detail items like you know, the color of window frames or the trim on a building or infill pieces between HVAC are materially affecting the value of neighboring properties, especially when the project presented is a, you know, a radical improvement of what, in the case of 70 Memorial, had been a crumbling building. So I don't feel as though that is a very productive strategy for the ARB to be guided by, and I think they would agree. So stay tuned. Talking to other communities, talking to some architects that have come before our ARB and others, talking to Keenan Bean about what kind of legislation exists elsewhere, potentially talking to BFJ about how this could work. You know, I would also say that the sort of underlying question here is, as you guys know, we once had a separate ARB, 5-member ARB and a 7-member planning commission. We had difficulty stocking the ARB with architects, in part because there aren't that many local architects, and many of the local architects that we have are themselves before the ARB and can't be in the position of being on the board that they have to present to. So because it was difficult to stock that board, we eventually folded that function into the planning commission. And I think that's had advantages and disadvantages. Advantages certainly because in many cases, the architectural elements come into play in thinking about site plan. But I think sometimes disadvantages because the clarity between the two gets a little bit obscured. So.
Sorry, go ahead. No.
Well, I was just gonna ask, as what's gonna result of this? Are we gonna have a presentation by Jennifer Gray, or is there gonna be?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think we'll get these various codes. I will say her preliminary thought was she's not certain that there is any enabling code out there that is thought to be best practice, that this is a concern that ebbs and flows in almost all communities. Because in part, you know, obviously, as was the case for the applicant in the appeal, the idea that ARB decisions can't be based on personal preference. I mean, in the end, aesthetic decisions are very hard to parse. if the idea of personal preference is supposed to be
Mhm.
somehow walled off, because in the end, it's in the eye of the beholder. Some of that stuff obviously is the sort of thing that people who do this for a living are used to talking about and thinking about. And I will also say, having been before some ARBs in my day job relating to sign projects, in some circumstances, it's easier, better, more productive to get commentary back from folks who have actually been on the other side of the table. And in the case of our ARB, during the 70th Memorial discussion, 3 architects on that board. So I think in the end, what's going to come back to us, and we could decide where to go next, is a sense from Jennifer about whatever she has found. Have not engaged BFJ, and we could, but I'll come back to you and let you know what I have heard from anybody. Welcome. So what I've heard from anybody that I have talked to, and I welcome anybody else's opinion. As I say, I reached out to some members of the Planning Commission / ARB, and will invite anybody else to weigh in. So.
Yeah.
There was a public statement by one of the members of the ARB, and I think it raised for me what is a little bit of a catch-22 in the existing regulations. We're essentially set up as a village so that the power to make decisions about architectural decisions about things like do the look and eventual, changes in the building cause the potential for a loss in value to the, nearby properties, to the ARB, which is composed of experts. And we consider them experts in 99% of our dealings as a village. We accept their expertise. The problem with the legislation is that it explicitly tells us that we must go back and judge their decisions, which means that if we accept
Well,
it,
in the case of an appeal.
in the case
which
of an
is
appeal, no,
Until now, never happened. Right.
so what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that in the case of an appeal, even if, the member was complaining that we weren't accepting their expertise, the problem is if there's an appeal, if we accept their expertise, there's no reason for an appeal because they've already applied it in making that decision. That is the collective expertise of the ARB. So we have to have some other grounds to judge the appeal in order to make it effective at all. And I think if we can't change the legislation, the only thing we can ask is both the applicants and the board, if they get to this point where they're hitting a crossroads, to seek outside evidence. And like I said at the time, I think it would have been talking to realtors or something else, but I don't feel like we were in a position where we could have said, well, the ARB said that this will hurt the property values in the neighborhood, or that it will present a problem according to the statute. And therefore we have to agree with them because we're explicitly not in that position. We have to judge it de novo. We have to sort of say, well, we're going to look at the facts, but we don't have more expertise in them either. So that to me is the problem that we have to surmount if we're going to look at this.
First off, we can change the legislation.
Yeah.
It's just ours. It's
Yeah.
not, it's unlike the planning commission, which is in significant part governed by the village section of state law. So we can write whatever we want. And indeed, not that I'm suggesting this, but there's no requirement even to have an ARB.
Mhm.
And as I reported, talking to the folks in New Rochelle, which I made the contact, but haven't had the conversation yet, they operate that in a rather different way. I think certainly the folks I've spoken to on the planning commission / ARB are everybody's interested in avoiding a circumstance like the one we ended up in. And I think everybody is certainly willing to hear out the other ways in which we could do it. So stay tuned on that front. At the moment, our ARB reviews commercial projects, signs, and projects in the overlay district. Residential projects elsewhere in the village are not the purview of the ARB. So that I'm not suggesting we need to change that, but some have suggested that a broader review would be helpful, that, every significant project come before the ARB. That obviously, is an advantage in one respect and a disadvantage in others. And I think the average applicant, the average person, whatever, wanting to build a new home, or to build an addition on their home, is not looking for a whole series of hoops to have to jump through in order to be permitted to do it. So, I would also say, just historically, it just hasn't been a problem, which is to say everybody's been completely happy with what their neighbors did, but by and large, the system has worked pretty well. So stay tuned on that front. I will report back when I have more info and welcome anybody's comment on any subject. So, and would encourage you guys to converse as well with anyone who raises the issue with you. So, all right. That is my update on that front. We're 4 minutes off from 8. Let me drag the podium over.
Good.
What, you're trying to beat me to it? You're trying to beat me to it? So I said I was gonna drag the podium over. You're trying to beat me to it.
Pull this out.
All right, we'll do it together.
Yeah.
That would be, I'll sign it.
We don't want it to disintegrate.
Yeah. What a team. Part of the board.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak, Tim?
Yeah, good.
Okay, great. I will do that relatively upfront so we don't keep you waiting.
Thank you. It's not really gonna take all that.
Yeah, fine. All right, 8 o'clock.
There you go.
Good evening. Welcome to the village board meeting. Today is Monday, December 11. We have a few items on our agenda, but the first is a comment from the public. Welcome, sir. We know who you are, but for the record, you need to give us your name and address.
Yes, I'm Tim Kelly. I live at 4 Grove Street. And I've lived there for 29 years now. That's hard to believe.
It is.
But it is true.
Yes.
And we've loved Pleasantville ever since we moved here, which is a wonderful thing. I'm really here to talk about a situation that happened quite a while ago, but I'm disappointed in some of the delays in some things that should have been addressed when this first happened.
Okay.
I'll do a very, very quick review of what occurred. Some people probably aren't familiar with it. I know Peter was, because he's mayor back then too. He's been mayor for a long time.
Yeah, 29 years.
So it has to do with some of the development that's going around down, especially the downtown area here. My property is on Grove Street, so right behind me, it's been pretty impactful because of what's occurred there. So what's happened over the years, there were some zoning changes that were made and some variances that were made, which are right on my property, along with some others on Grove Street to allow for the development. And I'm not against development. I'm really not. If it's done properly and respectful, it's what should be happening in this town. And most of it has been done pretty reasonably well, I think. But in my case, what happened, and like I said, this goes back a ways. But I'm still dealing with it, unfortunately. So I'm trying to get some things resolved and some, in essence, justice done for what had occurred to me. So when they were doing the development for the loft project over there, the town did give a variance for the town setback for residential and commercial properties. It used to be 20 feet. It was 20 feet. They gave a variance to go from 20 to 0 at the time. So there were some complaints that seemed a little excessive. So
That was a zoning board action.
It was a zoning board.
Yes, right.
Yes. But anyway, I mean, that occurred. It's what it was. They did have a buffer created to protect some of the things that were along the property line, which was pretty critical to my property at the time. So my property, I had some very large trees in back of my property that were on my property. They split my property with the property that was purchased for the project.
They were partly on yours, partly on his.
Probably,
right?
yeah. There were a couple probably that were more on mine, but the bottom line is there were a bunch of big trees that split the property.
Yes.
When they started doing the excavation on the work, which is, this was a long time ago. So this was back in, when I first noticed what was going on, was in April of 2017. So
Right.
excuse the delay and all this, but
You know what?
it'll come around quickly. So when that first happened, I noticed it right away, and neighbors had noticed how the excavating was really encroaching closer to the properties than it should have been. And which potentially could have done some damage to these trees, that were very important to my backyard. They gave, the impact that this would occur when these trees were cut down, which were pretty much illegal, really damaged my property, and how I could use it and enjoy it, and my family, for years since then. So when that happened, we noticed it, we went to the town, we had contacted, Warren Schlote at the time, who was still involved with it a little bit. The developer
Recently passed away, incidentally.
Excuse me?
Warren recently passed away, unrelated to
Oh,
what you're
you know,
saying.
I did hear that.
Yeah.
He was a good guy.
He was, yes.
So I really feel like that. And we also contacted, because we had contact information for, people on the project, because it was so close and impactful for especially people on Grove Street that were right there. And especially me, because I'm the corner property, that goes right up to where this development is, and also on the left side where they end up doing some other things which were, not related to what we're dealing with here. So we contacted the town, contacted, Vito Enrico, who's the developer, Alex, the project manager, and the town. So based on that, we had a scheduled meeting with the planning committee, which did happen, in July. And at that meeting, all these situations were discussed. And the really big thing for me were these trees, because these trees face, they're in the western part of my property. So when the sun comes to that direction, they were very large trees. They were 70, 80-foot trees. They produced a tremendous amount of shade from my backyard, my house, my living room. And I knew if something happened to these trees, it really would just change how we could enjoy our home. So we had this meeting in town. This is all recorded when it happened.
This was before the trees were low.
Oh, before the trees.
Yes, right.
Okay. So the meeting was in July of that year, 2017. So we had the meeting here, a lot of people, we had a lot of neighbors here. The developers were here, and this whole situation was brought up. And technically, they really can't cut trees down if it shares a property. You have to have agreements on both sides. But like I said, I want to make sure that nothing happened here. So the town agreed that these trees were not to be touched. At the time, at that meeting, Vito Enrico was there, Alex was there. It was all agreed, and the town had designated in the site plan that these trees were not to be touched. In fact, they're supposed to be protected.
Mhm.
So in the end, we met some people in the hallway, including some of these people, developing some things. We were very seemingly sincere. They said, we're really concerned about these projects because we know that it impacts you a lot. So these trees will not be touched. The town told them not to touch it. It's if you look at the records, it was all written up and everything. So lo and behold, about 5 months later, I get a call from my daughter when I'm at work saying, Dad, I think they're cutting the trees down. And I'm like, well, I said, there's no way they can cut the trees down because it was stipulated that they weren't to be touched. So I rush home. In fact, actually, I called the police in town to come and tell anybody working on these trees to stop immediately because it's illegal and they can't be touching, my trees. And sadly, by the time I got home, they were all gone. All these 4 or 5 massive trees, where there was nothing left. The view I had was shocking to me. It was just mind-boggling. So I'm sitting there, my neighbors are calling me up saying it's unbelievable what they've done. They have no clue that. At the time, even called me personally and complained that I called the police on him, which I think was outrageous. Not the point. I don't want to go off into side stories, but just it's what it was. So since that time, like I said, this really, it just crushed my whole backyard. So what I had to do is in our living room, which is in the back of the house, I had to buy and put up these massive drapes that I could seal off later in the afternoon so we don't get sunburnt and we can watch TV in our room. We can't use our back deck the way we want to because this sun is it's brutal. It just pummels the house. It heats up the house tremendously. And it's been like that for years now because you couldn't replace what these trees did to protect and just how we could use our backyard. Our kids could play there in the shade. It was really dramatic, which is why I was so specific and why our neighbors came and supported me and said, you know what, let's make sure this doesn't happen. And the town agreed, and they cut them down anyway. So it's been going on for years. I'm still working with some legal aspects of that. But one of the reasons I really came here is to discuss kind of the lack of action I think the town has done on this. So as soon as that occurred, obviously I talked to the town, I talked to the planning committee, I talked to Robert Hughes about this, and it was clearly a site plan violation at the highest level, and it was egregious. So I've been trying to follow up for now years on what was ever done about it. And to this day, nothing has been done about it. So I've been trying to contact Robert. The last correspondence I had from him, which now is a little over a year ago, and this is something maybe the town will get to, because I think this policy doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what he had written and told me was basically I would have to think if there's a site plan violation, it should be addressed immediately. It shouldn't be delayed, because that would allow any developer to have multiple site plan violations and never have it addressed. So I was told it's not typical to issue any site plan violations until the while the project is in progress. I don't get that at all. I mean, if they're working on a project and all of a sudden they're violating, what the site plans are, and you don't address it then, what's the point? So time's gone by, and basically he said when the project's over, and then they'll address it, and there'll be fines done and the whole thing. I do believe it's about 2 or 3 years now since people have been living in those buildings. The project's way done, and nothing, not the simplest thing was done to make me feel the town was conscious about some of these things that were happening. And since then, I've been after I got that notification back from Robert, I thought maybe they'll do this, because I want to have some of this stuff that the town is doing the right thing by me, because like I said, I have some litigation going on, and rightfully so, and nothing's been done. And since then, I think 5 times now I've sent notes about what's the latest on this thing, and I don't even get a response. So the town, as far as I know, the planning committee, they've done nothing about this. The building inspector has just kind of blown it off, it seems to me. And it's just not right, especially for something that was that egregious and impacted my house and my home and my family. And I think that needs to be addressed, as soon as possible. And I'd like to know why that hasn't happened.
All right.
And
So
I didn't know, I thought at this point I needed to come here and do it in front of you.
Yeah, fine.
Here, because I just thought I'm not getting responses now, and that's just not
Yeah.
right.
So we can pursue that. Let me just say a couple of things.
Yeah,
I'm not central to this, and these decisions were planning commission, building department, whatever.
right,
But just to be clear, the assertion made by Vito Errico and his group was that as they were doing the site work that was approved in their site plan, they felt that it became clear that those trees were at risk of falling on in the direction of the existing building. Right? So, and indeed, at one point I could dig them up and send them to you, perhaps have them. Pictures of that hillside condition, those were big trees with exposed roots that were growing on a hillside. You'll correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but your backyard it came to the former slope property, then the Errico property, and then there was sort of a rocky incline.
right, it sloped off.
Yeah, and these trees were, I don't know where the property line is exactly, but they certainly were straddling the property line.
Right.
With exposed roots on the hillside side.
Mhm.
So it might be, and I'm not the guy to assess this, maybe you aren't either, that it perhaps was unrealistic hope at the time of the site plan review to say, well, we're going to try to save those trees. If in fact a clear-eyed description would be, you can't build this and likely
Well,
save those. So
Okay.
I'm not,
No, I
Yeah.
get that, but the meeting, when that was all decided by the town, he was supposed to protect that better, much better than he did. He approached, first of all, he ended up approaching more than he should have, but the trees were still safe. Probably what was it, 2 years before that? We had Superstorm Sandy. one of the most ridiculous storms we've had in 100 years. Those trees did not fall down.
Well, I'm not saying they were at risk of falling until
Yeah.
the work that was done on his side started to happen. That's my understanding.
Right. Well, like I said, you should have protected it more, but it did not do that, and it was supposed to be.
I mean, and I'm not here to.
Right.
All I know about it is what you have said, and you've said this to me
Right.
before, and what Vito and company and their architect have said, about whether it was possible to develop his property within the rights he had
Right.
and to save those trees. So, he's also asserted at various points, I've not had this conversation anytime recently, that they have offered to plant trees on the properties of the adjacent homeowners. Did he offer that to you?
Oh, I haven't, the only phone call I got from them was
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah.
When he
Well,
said,
at any rate, he's also planted
I
quite a
can't
few.
cut down half a tree.
I
That's
believe
what he told
he's
me.
planted more trees than were in his site plan approval. Again, his report, I'm not here to say,
Yeah.
to play referee on that front. Is your litigation against him ongoing?
Yes,
Okay, so that,
it should be resolved. I mean, COVID slowed things down.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, and you know, the trees that even if he wanted to, I'd be dead before they would get to the height and size and do what they did. And that's why they did this.
I totally get that,
And
right?
he should have come back and said, you know what, we don't think, you know, he just did it on his own. He didn't go back to the
Yeah.
town. He didn't talk to me. He didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
He just said, you know what, I don't want these trees, and he cut them down.
I mean, again, his
and-
assertion, and I'm not
Right,
playing one side or the other, his assertion was, as they were undertaking their work, they realized they felt that those trees were now in imminent danger of falling over. Now, you assert that he had cut back farther than he was supposed to based on his site plan. Is that,
I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, when we addressed this long before we even got to that point, because we addressed this in April. When they first started, and they were cutting all sorts of trees down at that point. And when I went back and I talked to Warren, because Warren was there at the time, I went there and I looked up and they had axed off trees to cut down, and all my trees were marked for cutting down because they didn't want that.
Yeah.
Right there, you know, by their precious new parking lot. And that's why we had specific meetings. It was talked and you know, to come to my face and say, look, we'll not promise you we won't touch the trees, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, light bulb goes off. Oh, I don't think
So,
you're gonna survive it.
I mean, this must have all come out in the course of whatever litigation you're undertaking.
Right.
Is there a survey that shows
Yes.
where the line went
Yeah.
through the various trees? I mean, they
Yeah.
were
They're even they're building the project, you know, because they had all these plans and all the trees were cut down were, they were halfway on my property.
half and half? I mean, were there?
Probably half of some more, you know, it's, you have to look specific, right?
Well, so look, this is a bigger example of a problem that inevitably happens
Right,
when one property owner has a different view about trees than the other. So look, we'll go back to Robert, we'll go back to Russ. It's doubtless you have already
The thing that
done.
upsets me here is the fact that they just never even addressed it, and it was clearly a site plan violation. I mean, everybody in, you know, the board, everybody came back, I emailed saying that was basically egregious, it was totally against, we had a meeting about this. They ignored it completely and just cut the tree down without asking
Yeah,
us all.
so, I mean, the question of whether it's egregious would depend upon whether they were acting within the confines of their site plan and produced a circumstance
Right,
consistent with their site plan that rendered those trees unsavable or dangerous. If that happened, that is in a different category than, I don't want those trees, I'm gonna cut them down. Honestly, I don't know the
I
answer.
know, that's speculative at that point. But
Right.
But when this all happened, like I said, it was
Yeah.
it was very clear.
Right.
And it was at a high level of understanding and, without, you know, talking to the town, talking to the soul. You know, I think when we saw some of the other plans, they did plant some small bushes and things behind the property, which probably would have interfered maybe, if the trees were there. I think they would have probably because our property is right there. And, I just think he was, like I said, I can't speculate.
Understood, and nor can I.
I'm really bothered by the
Right.
fact that after all this correspondence and all this stuff, even a simple site plan violation, which that is clear as a bell, has never been touched. And
So-
now I don't even get responses.
So what is the process for a site plan violation like that? I feel like that's come up for me with other residents that have raised that. And I'm a little unclear about what Robert's role is in a situation like that. I don't know if Peter or Eric, you want to.
I mean, I think that obviously there are examples of an egregious site plan violation. Someone says they're gonna build a building and they build it in a different
Right.
place from where they sit, you know.
That's- Something
Right.
different.
That we end up, and this is a bigger example, I think, I know the one you're referring to, where the work one neighbor is doing, whether it's a business next to a residence or two residences, whatever it is, ends up having an impact that is viewed by the other, the adjacent neighbor as having been contrary to their interests, and not enough was done to protect it. Some of those things, are just gonna happen, and maybe we need to have a clearer process to adjudicate them.
Yeah, I guess what I'm curious
Right.
about is the procedure, you know, because it sounds like that's partly what you're raising. It's like,
My problem was it was such a huge, this been such a massive delay. I said, that should have been done like that week almost, or within, weeks. And to have a response saying, well, we wait until the project is over, that just
Yeah,
doesn't make
so-
sense. I
so-
don't get that.
Yeah, I don't, and again, I wasn't a party to this, but it had been said by some that the planning commission said, gonna try to save those, to protect those trees. Was there, in your view, there was certainty that
Well,
they
I mean,
could
you
be
go back to the
protected?
transcript of
Yeah,
the meeting.
I'm sure you have.
At that point, it was it was supposed to do everything, to protect the trees. And it wasn't even a protection thing, it
Yeah.
just chopped them down.
I mean, I will say, and again, and I'd be happy to sit down with you and just go look at these pictures, because you could fill me in.
Yeah.
Maybe that's best if you think you're close to your litigation being done, that would be probably the witching hour to do it,
It
but
should be pretty soon,
Right.
but like I said, I would
I mean,
be
these,
nice for me to say, yes, it was a site plan violation and the town.
I mean,
agreed.
the pictures of these trees, again, I'm no
Yeah.
arborist, look to me like they've been growing in kind of a problematic way and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that there was gonna be a day, whatever it was, when something had to happen there.
Well,
Clearly,
I
that day
think
came way
part
sooner
of it
than-
was- There was supposed to be, and this did happen when they built, the parking lot behind me. They built a very tall retaining wall. They were gonna backfill it in. And, I would think that would be, very important for the future of the trees also, because they leveled it. It's level with my backyard. They put their bushes there, but my trees are gone. And like I said, every single night, we sit in our living room and I said, it's unbelievable how it changed our house. It was, and like I said, and everybody who's been at my house, in my backyard, enjoyed barbecues and all that kind of stuff. Now they were just like, this is ridiculous. It was unbelievable. And we can't enjoy our home like that anymore.
Thank you for telling us. The two things that are in our purview here for sure is to make sure that our village employees are communicating with residents who are trying to get answers on things. And I think we
Right.
can ensure that that will happen. And to also make sure that the procedures that the village should undertake are clear.
Yeah.
And I think we can guarantee that will be followed upon too,
Right.
right, Eric?
And like I said, I think there has to be, because I know there's more things coming down the pike in town here, but when some of these developments are we're right next to residential homes, there's gotta be some, better safeguards and better consideration.
I've had the same exact thing happen to me with the Toll Brothers involving trees also, so I
Right.
completely understand.
we're actually, this is a bit parenthetical, but we're looking into a tree ordinance right now. And one of the such scenarios we're interested in is the development. So
I like that.
you
idea, too.
might,
We had a huge oak tree
it'd be
that was
interesting
probably
to
next
have
to us
you-
that was very, very healthy. It was a beautiful tree.
yeah,
And they cut it down like 2 years ago.
The neighbor chose to cut it down.
Yeah, it was, I'm very fortunate, right in the middle of my backyard, I have a huge, like spectacular white oak tree. It's probably 150 years old. Which thank God nobody get close to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But right next to me, what's the property next to us there? That's,
The one on the corner,
yeah,
the
Jacob Burns is
the
part of
Jacob Burns Foundation.
Right. Well, it wasn't quite as big and old as mine, but they had a beautiful oak tree there and they cut it down like 2 years ago.
And was that because they perceived it to
I think
be?
they just, I don't know if it was just because it was dropping leaves. I mean, it looked very, very healthy. I mean,
Yeah.
I just think they didn't want.
Well, look, I mean, in all the years I've been involved in one way or another, planning commission, ARB, and as the trustee and as the mayor, every year there are disagreements among people about trees.
Right, yeah.
Neighbors who say, well, I feel as though your tree is a risk to my property.
Right,
Or neighbors who find somebody else's tree to be problematic because it drops pine cones,
Pine
whatever,
cones and-
whatever it might be. Not everybody has the same view.
Yeah.
Differences of opinion about who wants shade, who wants sun, and it's just, that part is written in the stars. And the very hard part, sounds like your circumstance, is when there's a tree that straddles
Right.
the
Yeah, in my
line.
case, it was 4 trees, so it wasn't like there was 1 or 2 that were
Yeah.
questionable, so somehow they just said they're all no good, and I know for a fact that they were not. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he said the trees weren't healthy. I think that, again, the argument, and I'm not here to
Right.
judge it, and I don't have any basis to, was that they were unstable. The root system was.
yeah,
So,
so I think they would have gone down and.
All right, so-
But anyway, my point really was more procedural, but I needed to give you some background.
Okay.
Occurred, and like I said, it was, it's what it was, but, I'd like to see at least that part addressed and soon. I feel like I'm just being ignored over there now, and it's, it's been years, and it's, I just want to have something.
Yeah, I mean, this all
in my back pocket.
happened 6 years ago, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It was, happened in 2017.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
things have been slow because of everything. but
7
like I
years
said,
ago, right?
I've been asking about this for a long, long time, just to not get any.
Okay, we'll inquire.
Michael wanted to.
Um,
I just want to ask a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm glad to hear from you. I've heard rumors about this case, so I'm glad to hear it from you. And I guess my question is about, do you think, or does anyone here think that the fact that Robert was deposed in the litigation or had provided deposition in the litigation, does that affect his ability or inability or willingness or unwillingness to kind
I don't
of
know. I don't have an answer to that one.
like to act on behalf of the government?
I mean, I think it enters into it. I don't think it means he needs to be mute, but there are issues there.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a procedural thing that even if it's not Robert, the building department should be addressing it, and it's kind of that, so.
I just a point of.
Yeah, no, it's, I just, you made me think about that, yes, I do believe you.
You should be getting answers from somebody in the village.
Okay, I appreciate that. Last thing, a little sidebar. Cause I've noticed with a bunch of other people, obviously Wheeler is very busy these days, River Avenue. And I and a couple of people have talked about this. The light at the end of Wheeler
Totally agree.
is like a 5-second light.
Yeah.
Like
Totally
2 cars go through
So-
and then it turns. So
We're
maybe,
working on it.
Here's our report.
We're working on.
Beyond totally agree.
Right.
We have engaged at significant expense and now have a 600-page document. 500 and some pages are detailed data. We brought in a company, DTS Provident. They put out counters all along Bedford
To help sync lights.
and to try to figure out how to sync these lights.
Right.
And
yeah.
they've come back with us. And now the next phase of this is to do, and then to act on it.
Okay.
Here's one interesting piece of data. Well, I can send you this report if you want to, if you have trouble sleeping. But the one interesting piece of data is that at that corner, Wheeler and Bedford,
Mhm.
when somebody hits the pedestrian button,
Yes.
when their cycle is activated, traffic is stopped in all directions, all four.
Yeah, I knew that was
like-
part of the.
and-
tie-in,
and-
yeah.
Then there's a countdown of 15 seconds and then a brief pause and then one side gets to go. So they now have this data. 75% of the time, there isn't a pedestrian there. And that occurs because somebody hits the button, as naturally you would, and then
Right.
you see an opportunity to get across,
And you just cross.
which is
right?
often the case.
Yeah.
And then some seconds later, all traffic is stopped.
Yeah.
While this pedestrian cycle works its way through. And so there's a challenge there about what to do about it,
Yeah.
between pedestrian safety but clearly that's a lousy situation. The
Yeah.
light is too
maybe
short.
maybe
It's stopping
the
everybody
dead
too
time
much.
could be shortened
Right,
up
yeah.
3-4
So-
seconds or whatever it
Yeah.
becomes, when you have to look at those aspects of it. A lot of people have definitely noticed that.
Oh, my God.
I sit there a lot saying, oh my gosh, only 2 cars went and I'm only 6 cars back.
Well, and then people get more frustrated,
Yes.
and then it also is hard for people trying to back out of the diagonal spaces because
Yeah.
nobody wants to let them in because they've waited so long to get where they got.
Nobody
So-
wants to give up,
Yeah.
or be,
All right, so,
conscientious about.
Yeah,
something
we've got-
Because they're like, I've been waiting here.
we've-
So.
I mean, the next question is how easy it is to do it and whether we need different equipment and all that, but
Right.
we're
We're
totally.
working on it.
All right, I'm glad.
I count me as annoyed person number one when
Right.
that happens.
Okay.
All right.
All right, well, I appreciate your time, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Like
Yeah,
I said,
thanks for
hopefully
Appreciate it.
part of this will be resolved, but like I said,
All right.
it's sad for me because I will never get these trees back.
I'm sorry about your
I have
trees.
to close, I can't look at my backyard at times because of what it is, so. But anyway, thank you so much.
Okay.
And enjoy your holidays, everybody.
Likewise.
You
Yep, thanks for your
too.
time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we're in the category of public comment. Is there any other public comment on any subject? All right. Welcome, sir.
Trees is one of the, Brad Serlin, 159 Sarles Lane.
Hello.
Hi, and, so I guess I'll start with trees. I'll send it maybe to Nicole, actually.
Yeah.
And on Continental and Sarles, which might be in the town, might be in the village, I'm not really
I
sure.
think it's in the village.
They took down 2 trees right there, at
The
the end.
homeowner did or the village did?
I don't know who did,
Okay.
honestly. I think it
Mario
was
told me it was in
probably,
the town.
Oh, it's in the town.
Yeah,
is it the
I
town?
believe.
All
it's in
right.
the
So
town.
somewhere is the line between the end of the village and the beginning of the town of Mount Pleasant.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But that's not the only place. unfortunately.
Yeah,
So, so those, those go near wires, so I understand there's probably a reason for it. I just was wondering what, maybe you know this or maybe you don't, what,
We kind of.
in that case, is there anything that forces them to plant trees back? And you mentioned the tree ordinance, that's a possibility, which I've heard about. Because also there was a couple of trees, if you were walking from Pleasant to the sawmill, there's that little patch of grass there. It's hard to explain where it is.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Right by where the light is. which
The
is like-
walkway to the light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was 2 trees there that were old and faltering
Yes.
and those came down.
Yes.
And to me, it's a great opportunity for a couple of small trees to get put back in.
Yes.
I just wanted to understand what, the village does try to do that or how that all works because super disappointing to see that. In both cases, one case happens to not be you guys, but,
so I can speak to that a little bit. I would recommend that you talk at some point to the foreman of the Parks and Recreation, because he's kind of our tree guy. And so his name is Mario Sansoda. I can give you his email address. And he's a big supporter of trees in general. And, in the past, it's been a little bit ad hoc, but I think increasingly the Recreation Department has a plan, sort of an annual plan for tree replanting. And this is something that we're looking at with the tree ordinance as well, because and the tree ordinance hasn't been passed yet. We're gonna have a presentation of it coming up at some point. But the concept is to have a tree fund that would increase the fund that we can to use for replanting. But there is, I mean, I think it would be useful to talk to Mario and perhaps to Mike Newman, who's our superintendent as well. There is definitely a plan for replanting when trees come down, so.
great.
And then in terms of when trees are cut down, so it can be for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's a safety issue, sometimes it's flagged by a resident, sometimes it's Con Ed. We have an arborist that we contract with that gives an assessment, if somebody's claiming that a tree is diseased, is it actually diseased? Is it actually a threat? And so on. So there is some measure of consideration that goes into at least village cutting down trees.
I just haven't seen any go up where I've seen them come, so I figured I would ask about it. I
Yeah,
also did take advantage of your tree program that I think you guys.
yeah, the 50/50 program.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
and I think Mario was probably the one who came to my
And
house.
Probably. He
Excellent.
keeps an eye on the trees too, so he will go around the village and make sure that they're in good health and so.
We do plant a bunch every year, but again, I think you're absolutely right that a bigger and more organized plan will be good. You likely already know, further to the conversation we just had, neighbors don't always agree about whether they want a tree. I mean, we certainly have had many circumstances where someone doesn't want a tree in front of their house. We planted trees at various points over many years, putting new street trees, and some people say, no, I don't want you to put a tree in front of my house.
Right.
For whatever reason they might have, whether it's raking leaves or shade or sun or, you know, all those things. So, that part of it has been, you know, partly, subject to neighbors agreeing to it. I will say, and this goes to your point, this is now probably 25 years ago, hard to imagine. We planted a lot of new trees on Bedford Road. We planted them in between the curb and the sidewalk, which was, you know, against the advice of arborists who say, no, you should plant them on the house side of the sidewalk. They have more room, better room for roads. But that becomes a significant incursion into private property. You have to get the private property owner's approval to do it. Not everybody agreed to. And I have often thought in more recent years, had we not done that, Bedford Road, a significant piece of Bedford Road would really not have a tree canopy at all. Because all of those big Norway maples were planted at the same time and they were all dying and getting into trouble at the same time. And so,
Sugar maples.
was it sugar maple?
Yeah, yeah.
You would know better.
There are other areas of Pleasantville where that's happening too. I mean, I live near Edgewood and there's beautiful maples on Edgewood, but a lot of those are coming to the end of their life as well. So I would say, like, if this is a subject you're passionate about, you know.
Be careful, she's gonna get you on a committee.
No, tune in. I mean, you're friends with Andy Ryman, or I
Yes.
think you know him, so
Yes.
he can certainly make you aware. Another thing that we're working with the Recreation Department on doing is having a tree survey. So having a system where we really kind of track the trees around the village, and I think that will make it easier too to have a systematic approach to replanting. So knowing when, you know, knowing what's there and knowing when trees come down and are replanted and so on.
Great.
So,
All right, I'll follow up with those guys. The other reason, which is just following up on something. So over the summer, Mr. Mayor, you came, and I think a couple other people from the board and one of the police officers came because we're over, you know, Sarles, Pleasant, that area.
Yeah.
And everybody's been, I saw on the, it's not on the agenda, but there's something that I think the village is proposing to the state to get a red light cam put
Right, so
in that one area.
what we would like is a red light camera on the sawmill at Grand Street.
Yeah.
That requires an act of the state legislature, which is an uphill battle, but they suggested it would help if the board, we've already written a letter to the DOT asking for this, but this resolution is supposedly the next piece. Don't get me started about the rules about red light cameras, which strike me as a, you know, transparently positive thing. Like, why someone would argue about catching someone going through a red light is beyond me, but there is a significant argument against it. For example, the state legislator, the Assembly and the Senate recently passed and the governor signed legislation that gives the county the right to install up to 50 red light cameras on county-owned roads. They intend to do it on the Bronx River and the Hutch. But the county doesn't own the sawmill, and so that doesn't cover it. And, you know, in the category of really, the legislation gives them a maximum of 50 and it sunsets in 5 years unless it's renewed. So this would, I guess, to be the test case to see if it's actually good to stop people from going through red lights. I mean, you wonder. So yes, we're on it. And in fact, with the assistance of a bunch of people, Yemi Picard and a bunch of people, we put together, and Eric sent a letter to DOT Region 8 with 8, was it, proposals? And honestly, I've gotten back a letter essentially saying almost none of them are things that they're in a position to act on. So we're working on it, and we've talked to Andrew Stewart Cousins and to Mary Jane Shimsky, and stay tuned.
Okay, that was just one part of it. So the rest of the part in the neighborhood, which we did mention on my night, but wanted to come and talk just to make sure it's staying, you know, top line as best as possible, is just that, no, there's no sidewalks in that part of the town.
Yes.
And 1 million kids, you know
Yes.
how the neighborhoods turn over. We're
Yeah.
at the point now where all of the kids are about this big.
Yeah.
And millions of dogs, you know.
Yes.
Stop signs optional. I'm out with my dog at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. It is a matter of time before something happens.
When you say optional, people are not stopping at stop signs, is
I'm
it?
not stopping at stop signs. Now, I realize that some of the areas are pretty quiet and they feel like they're safe, but
Yeah,
if I'm coming up the hill and you don't see me with my dog, which happened last week, I'm all of a sudden getting moved off. And we have to share the road because there's no sidewalks. So I just wanted to sort of put the word out. Hopefully you've heard more of this before. And you'll let me know what I can do to sort of help on this in the future. I also heard that you're trying to potentially move from 30 to 25.
Mhm.
that's a discussion, yeah.
And I would be all for that. New York City, it's 25.
Yeah, here's one interesting piece of that, and well, first off, in order to do it, the state law changed recently to allow that. Previously, the minimum, except for school zones, was 30 statewide. Now we can get down to 25. We have to engage a study about it, which we have already undertaken. One interesting piece about it is that we have purview only over village streets, and county and state roads are not within our power. So for example, Bedford Road is a county road. Manville is a state road. And Washington is a village road out to about Grandview, and then from Grandview to Chappaqua is a county road. So none of those are locations where we theoretically have the capacity to affect it. We certainly don't have the capacity on Manville. I think the county perhaps is open to a conversation with communities about pieces of county roads that engage the village, but a village speed limit. But what it does mean, and we'll see this when we get back this report, is that you'd end up with 25 in some places, switching to 30 when you're on a county or a state road. So,
Well,
yeah,
still better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've been here for about 11 years now in Woodland Village, and at some point, maybe 6, 7 years ago, the police were in our neighborhood, actually stopping people at stop sign, who were rolling through stop signs, and gave out a few tickets. And there was an uproar in the community. And I don't know what happened, but I've never seen police
Yeah.
since in the neighborhood, so I don't.
What was the uproar about? People didn't
But
want?
like, how dare they?
Oh, okay.
That sort of thing.
yes.
Well, I would, so the pedestrian committee worked pretty closely with the police department. So, I think, if you felt that it was warranted for the police to come again and keep an eye for a little while, that's certainly something that our police department does, in coordination
Yes.
with the pedestrian committee. You're actually the first person who has talked to me specifically about that issue, so that hasn't really been raised yet. But I think, I would coordinate the two of them potentially.
But you're also quite right
Yeah,
that inevitably the idea of safety and the reality of enforcing it sometimes collide.
And I get it.
Yeah.
And I think what also happens over there is everybody is, and understandably, very focused on the Sawmill Grant Street light.
Right.
And I think when you guys all came out, the reason why we had that little meeting in the summer
There had been an
was because
accident.
there had been an
Yeah,
accident, and, so I think, but there was definitely some of us who were speaking during that time where we all shared about the neighborhood, and I just want to make sure that there's focus on the neighborhood itself as well. The Sawmill Light is, it's its own, but
Yeah.
there are two, to me, it's two issues
It is, I think.
that are related, but.
Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. We'll have a chat with the police chief about maybe getting some enforcement going over there.
yeah.
Even just a presence perhaps causes people to, even absent people getting tickets. I'm not saying they shouldn't get tickets if they violate, but a regular presence perhaps helps.
Yeah, there was a speed, I don't know what you call it, where it tells you how fast you're
Yes.
going. But on Pleasant on that hill.
Yes,
Mhm.
But it doesn't say slow down. It doesn't say what the speed limit is. So
okay,
I haven't really seen much change in that yet.
Okay.
And that is a super dangerous place. So I was really glad to see that, but like, I know when you come, I don't know what the road is, but when you're coming from the Taconic, coming back down into
Yeah.
the village, there's a couple of those and it'll
Yeah.
say, slow down, or
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's.
when you
intended to add that
get, some
little
of them,
thing.
when you get down to the speed limit, it says thank you.
Okay. Well, this one just tells you how fast you're going, and I feel like some of the people are just saying, oh, how high can I make that thing go?
Well, there are, don't get me, some of them, you have to be programmed to go blank if it gets above a certain amount, specifically for that reason. It's like,
Really?
people are crazy sometimes.
Anyway,
All
thank you.
right, thank you for your comments, much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments from anybody on any subject? Enter and sign in, please. We're feeling
70 Ashland.
We're feeling well loved, all these people coming to see us.
We went from trees to traffic. So I talked to you about
You
it.
did.
So wanted to bring your attention to a problem we have on Ashland, which is speeding on Ashland. And I think there are 3 conditions on Ashland that are a little bit different. I don't know if they're unique, but they conspire to create these conditions where people are racing down Ashland. One is that it's very wide and newly paved.
I brought this up on our last.
We
meeting.
won't
You
do
did?
it again if you
All right,
want.
well, I'm gonna back you
Go
up.
ahead, yeah, you live there, you live there, so you, but
Yes.
I see.
I do, and in fact, my home office faces out onto the street and I see people racing down in both
course.
directions all day. So it's very wide, it's very straight, and it's newly paved. So that's one thing. The second is it's a cut through to ShopRite, helps you avoid a very quick light up in the old village. So if you're going to ShopRite CVS from the new village, you cut through, you can make a right on red at the bottom of Nanahagan. So you don't get stuck at the light behind the buses or anything. It's very quick. So I think people are kind of in a frame of mind of, if you're trying to get somewhere quick, you're probably more likely to speed because you're already thinking, I'm going to take the shortcut. So, and then the third thing is that, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but when you turn, if you're going east on Bedford and you turn onto Ashland, it's a little bit more than a 90-degree turn. I don't know what it is, it's 95. I haven't got my protractor out, but it's a little bit more than 90 degrees. And the reason that's significant is that as you turn, you don't necessarily see all the traffic coming at you. You kind of turn and then you're watching. And by the time you straighten out your steering wheel, the sign that says speed limit 15 miles per hour is already 10 or 15 feet behind you. And I'm sure it's placed there consistent with some traffic regulations, but nobody seems to know that it's 15-mile-an-hour school zone from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I tell people all the time, and they're like, well, that's not even posted. You can't. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's posted at the very bottom of Nanahagan and the very beginning of Ashland. And try it. I mean, next time you're doing your cut through to CVS or ShopRite, you'll see it's so close to the corner.
He sent me a
So
video.
I don't suggest we put potholes on it to make it a bumpier road, but I don't know if there are.
He did, you are interested in a speed hump.
I am interested in,
Yes.
I'd be interested in anything, a speed bump, making it, doing something like what you do on Academy, like make it one way. For like one of the directions from Middle School Road out, because when people line up for parking for BRS, it's very hard to, have
Well,
it see
I will
cars.
say, I mean, are you talking part-time one way?
Yeah.
So I will say
But
that
like,
I think it's really, really hard to establish a part-time one way. I know we have
Yeah,
an academy.
I'm not a traffic
Yeah,
engineer, I don't know what the solution is.
What about like a traffic
All I know is
calming
that I know
measure?
people are going down at 40, 50 miles an hour. They go really fast and I'd be, at the very least, you might want to think about one of those automated speed things, which I don't know if those collect data or they just notify people how fast they're going, but I don't think anyone knows that it's 50. I don't think people are saying, oh, I'm going to take my chances. We very rarely, a couple times I wrote chief and they'd send someone out. And of course, when they send someone out, they're fully visible, so nobody speeds. And I don't think they wrote any tickets. And you said, well, that's good too. It means people slow down. But I think people just don't know. It's 15 miles an hour is really slow.
So I would say we should talk to Anthony Carr, like the traffic engineers nowadays, I think what they would say is what you need is a traffic calming measure, like meaning something that sticks out into the road a little bit and that interrupts the line of sight. So that, because I think the 3 things that you noted as contributing to the speeding, the first one is probably the biggest one, namely that you have this relatively wide, straight, cleanly paved road, right?
Well,
I
I
think
mean, it's a convenient cut through.
It's a cut through. And
well, that too, but I mean, I think that,
I really don't think anyone sees the signs. it is so close to
But-
Bedford, by the
so-
time you're accelerating.
Yeah, but if you have anything that interrupts that line of sight and that makes it not a clean shot, then people tend to slow down. So I don't know if that's something we could do or not, but Anthony, our superintendent of public works, is very up on all of this kind of traffic engineering. And so I think it would be worth consulting with him and see what he would suggest. What do you guys think about that idea?
Sure. So,
Absolutely.
you mean like curb bump, like bump outs and.
And we'll
rumble
take you off the list
strips?
for-
Well, because like the
what?
road that I was, yeah, the road that I always think of that way is Manville, but of course we can't do anything about Manville because it's not our road. But Ashland is, and so, it would be, yeah.
Yeah, there were, I've seen
Where
roads in
you
other
have-
communities that are near schools where they just put a bump out.
Yeah,
and
if you
have
just
to
put
sort of
a couple
enter
little
into it.
bump outs,
Then
it
you see
changes the
whatever sign.
psychology of it completely.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I mean, we should look at it. I will say
How about a
inevitably,
traffic circle?
Traffic circle.
not everybody is of the same view
Yeah,
on where a
do a
bump out
Boston
should go and
School.
whether it's in front of their house and, all those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
no, I'm-
all right.
I think she's saying we put a
I'm
bump
done.
out.
I mean, at the very least, like, if you could just put another sign where people
Mhm.
see it, that would seem to be easy. I mean, there's no, you don't have to pour concrete, well, I guess you have to pour a little concrete.
Yeah.
But just take a look next time
Okay,
you do
yes.
that, like, do the turn and then look up for the sign and you'll see it's already behind you.
We will.
All right, I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll look into it.
All right.
Thanks.
Any further
Take care.
comment
Have a good night.
from anyone in person or on Zoom? Raise your hand. I see no hands raised. Okay,
I do have to apologize to everybody. In about 6 minutes, I have to leave to light candles with my family for religious purposes.
okay. Couple of announcements to make here. The first is a shout out to everybody, especially to the Chamber of Commerce and to Paul for the lighting ceremony last week.
Well done.
Really a nice gathering, lighting the tree, lighting the dreidel, kids singing, a band. First time we've had food available with wood and fire in there.
Second year.
Was that the second year?
Yeah.
Thanks to Pace, as they have always participated, helping with hot chocolate. So, a really nice event. Thank you, for that. Last week, we also had a joint meeting with the school board, as we do once a year. If that's a matter of interest to anybody, that video, I'm sure, is up and available via their website. Shout out again to Andy Goodman, Kat Nemec, Greg Nemec for the bubble hunt over Thanksgiving weekend. I think I mentioned it the last time, but what a great thing. Really a gift to the community, and so many people have a good time doing it. More people did it this year than ever before. And then our folks in the beautification committee are running the second annual window display competition. So vote for your favorite window display in the village. You can cast a ballot anytime up through December 17 at Kimberly House, which is at 69 Wheeler, or the Village Bookstore at 10 Washington Avenue. One vote per person. Winner announced the following day, the 18th. And then just a big Pleasantville welcome to some new and revived businesses. We had a ribbon cutting a few days back at the King's Scribe, which is right between Kimberly House and Rhododendron on Wheeler Avenue. Great to see her there, and likewise straight across the street, Crawdaddy's in the former steakhouse. A great venture by the folks that own Foley's and Raconteur. And as you may have noticed, the former Pleasantville Pharmacy has now been divided into two, a new storefront on the left side, which is still, as we understand it, for rent. Right-hand side is in construction right now for a new dentist's office. And then if you haven't already heard, I have the happy news to report that the remaining storefront at 39 Washington, that's the new building on Washington Avenue, the storefront between King's Crown Liquor and the Chase Manhattan Bank will 6 to 9 months from now open as a pharmacy. White's Apothecary, city-chemist.com. And so for the first time in a few years, folks will be able to get prescriptions filled and over-the-counter medications available right here in Pleasantville, New York. So that's a really exciting report. Nicole, you want to comment about the rebates for electric?
Sure.
Vehicles?
So you may or may not be thinking about leaf blowers and weed whackers right now, but we are having another turn-in event sponsored by our Climate Smart Task Force on Saturday, September 16th from 9 to 12 p.m. You can turn in your old gas-powered leaf blowers, weed whackers, lawnmowers, or snow blowers and be eligible for a rebate. So if you show up between 9 and 12 on Saturday, whoever is there to receive your old equipment will give you the information you need, how to turn in your receipt to get a rebate.
Great. And then last thing I had on my list was get yourself to PleasantvilleMusicFestival.com. The 18th Pleasantville Music Festival December Ticket Fest is ongoing right now. You can save quite a bit of money by buying your tickets to the July Music Festival right now, and you can do that online. And you can also do it down at the rec center on a few specific Saturdays. And that would be next Saturday, the 16th from 9 to 3 and Saturday, the 23rd from 9 to noon. Great opportunity for a gift for you and yours Pleasantville Music Festival. So
Happy Hanukkah, David.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say that we have an upcoming election. Next year, the mayor and 2 trustees are up for election. After 2 terms, I will run for a 3rd term. For what reason, I have not yet determined.
TBD.
But I've been enjoying my time on the board, and I feel like we've improved our communication over the last few years, and that's something I'm interested in continuing to work on. But I do have to go now. Thank you.
okay, much appreciated.
Should I pick up where you left off?
Pick up where he left off, Trustee Pepper.
So yeah, as the year draws to a close, I have the opposite announcement, which is that I am not running for re-election to the board next year. It was a difficult decision. I've been proud of the work of the board and hope that I did something positive, or at least it was neutral. And I think in the past 3 years, we've heard a lot of different views about a surprising number of matters, and I think we handled contentious issues well, like pace of development, marijuana legalization, even leaf blowers, management of public land and climate change, all of that. But simply stated, at this particular phase of my life, I'm being pulled in too many directions, and both professionally with career demands and also with care for children and ailing parent. So I've greatly appreciated the opportunity for public service. And I think the pragmatic and nonpartisan board is very inspiring to me as a patriotic American. And I'm grateful that the village has entrusted me with my small bit of responsibilities. I guess thank you again. And I've learned a lot about a surprising diversity of issues.
Things you never knew you would.
Truly things I never knew I would need to learn about, and that I didn't know our impressive little government was dealing with behind the scenes all the time. And I think Pleasantville is in very good hands and will continue to thrive.
Well, thank you, Michael, and we look forward to taking advantage of whatever time you have in whatever way we can
Sure.
down the road, and
I'll be around.
we'll get you back. Following up to that, it is my intention to run again as your mayor. If you will have me, I will do it. So folks who are interested in running for any of these positions can get information from the County Board of Elections. There are some links available at pleasantville-ny.gov. The election takes place in March, and petitions need to be filed in February. There are a series of dates available via the Westchester County Board of Elections, which runs our local elections. I can report, as many of you know, we have a longstanding tradition of running independently without party affiliation. Sometimes a local party crops up with a name, but we don't run as Republicans and Democrats. And I can report that I think that has been an enormous gift to this community. And is a tradition that ought to remain forever. So that's my 2 cents on that subject. All right.
I want to announce one quick thing. If
Please do.
the Chamber of Commerce tomorrow has their holiday party. If there's any businesses that would like to join, their membership would cover them for tomorrow. So the event is free and it covers them all the way through 2024. So you essentially get 2 holiday parties. We also have civic members.
And a
that
set of
join.
steak knives.
We also have, we have memberships, it's important to know that we also have memberships for civic members, so you don't necessarily have to have a business to be in the Chamber of Commerce. We have a few civic members that are just members of the community who share their input on businesses in general. So if you'd like to just be a part of the chamber, it's a much lower, I believe it's $50 or $75 for a year membership, so we welcome anyone. So if anyone's interested, feel free to join, and you can join us tomorrow. Our holiday parties from 5 to 7 at Craft tomorrow.
Thank you for that. And you get 2 parties for 1. You get.
There you go.
all the way through 20. I can report, as a small business owner in Pleasantville, I'm a longstanding member of the Chamber of Commerce, not specific to my life as the mayor. And it is a great opportunity to meet folks and deepen relationships that you otherwise wouldn't have. So Paul's the vice president, longstanding vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. Bill Fluke's longstanding president. So thank you to you and everybody else who makes that train run.
Yeah.
All right, anything further? Last thing I wanted to mention is 2 weeks from today, our normal Monday meeting would occur on the 25th, Christmas Day. As a result of that, we have a special meeting that's scheduled for noon time on Thursday, December 21. At the moment, primary and likely sole purpose is to pass the check register so that the folks who need to get paid can get paid. And then we will be back on our regular schedule in 2024 with a meeting on Monday, January 8th. All right. We're already into an hour here, and we haven't begun our 2 public hearings. Is there a motion to open a public hearing concerning wetlands permit application for the reconstruction of the village pool?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Eric, lots have been already said about this, but why don't you give the short version?
Sure. So, as part of the pool reconstruction project, there is a flood mitigation component of that. Essentially, we are looking to construct a second culvert underneath the pool deck, and widening the waterfall area. There is in the village code a wetlands 50-foot buffer. So once you disturb that portion or over a certain threshold, I think it's certain tonnage that is disturbed, it does necessitate that a wetlands permit be issued. So the board has taken over that purview to issue that wetlands permit. There is a rather insignificant encroachment in the wetlands, as the village engineer has detailed in the attached memo. That wetlands is about 50 feet from the inflow and outflow of this culvert. Really, the disturbance is regrading of land and replacing existing asphalt with new asphalt.
And it affects, I believe I'm right, 0.09 acres of land. So it's a very small piece.
Yeah, actually, I think just talking to the village engineer, I think it's 0.18.
So
0.18, so
I see.
well under an acre.
Two of those.
2 point.
Two
Yeah.
sides, yeah.
Yes,
Right.
the
I
inflow.
didn't multiply.
Yeah, so it's really insignificant, but we are required to have a public hearing.
Which we are in right now.
Yep.
All right, so
One thing I will mention is we do need to keep this public hearing open to allow for 30 days, which is also within our code, but.
all right, is there any comment from any of us other than what we've already heard? And this is a matter we've heard discussed before. Any comment from a member of the public, either in person or online? Raise your hand in Zoom if you have a comment on this subject. There being none, is there a motion to end the discussion, but to keep the public hearing open And it would be closed on a date certain, or we close it at our next
Well,
meeting?
likely the first meeting in January,
Okay.
we'll close it since the next
All right.
meeting.
So the public hearing remains open. If folks have any comments, they should address them to Eric Morrissey, the village administrator.
Yep.
At admin.
Administrator at
Administrator.
pleasantville-ny.gov. You can go onto our website and all the contact info is also in there.
Okay,
Just want to commend the highly detailed report we were provided on this matter.
and I echo that.
Everything you could ever want to make a decision, to make a decision
Yes.
is included here, and it's really impressive.
Which is your shout out to Anthony Carr.
Exactly, that's what I
Right,
meant.
yes,
Yeah,
it's,
to Anthony. yes.
He has, as he has proven in the time he has been with us, a man who knows what he's doing, dots the i's, crosses the t's, but is able to do that without losing the big picture. So thank you, Anthony. All right, with that, we will move on, leaving that public hearing open to be closed at the forthcoming meeting. Is there a motion to open a public hearing concerning introductory local law 7 of 2023 to amend chapter 173-24 and 173-68 of the code of the village of Pleasantville concerning loading zones?
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Welcome to the second exciting public hearing of our evening. Eric, you want to give the summary?
So we are looking to add more detail to the village code pertaining to loading zone. It's rather light. What this local law does is puts in place a 15-minute loading zone threshold, and also identifies a first formal loading zone, which is right in front of 70 Memorial next to the bump down. As we identify future loading zone locations, we'll have to do a similar process. It's actually a local law process to do that. So we're contemplating potentially one in front of the Atwood, and then another on Cooley, which historically had been a loading zone in signage only, not according to the code, but as we restripe Cooley Street, we'll figure out the best location there and formalize that as well. But this is the first step.
All right, again, it's a subject we've talked about before. Any comment from the board? Any comment from a member of the public or anyone online? There being none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. All right. With that, to the resolutions. Paul, number 402.
result, the board of trustees hereby approves the minutes of the regular meeting held on November 27th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or corrections to the minutes? The one correction I had is that at the bottom of the first page, Kat and Greg Nemec made reference to in the minutes about the puzzle is MEMEC, not ECK.
Got it.
All right, all in favor with the minutes as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. 403, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for the fiscal year ending 2024 as listed below. Water fund budget transfers $8,313 from water admin full-time to water admin outside service.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, questions?
So that is for our grant writer. We contracted with the new grant writer in the middle of the fiscal year. That's the contract timeline permitted, and that's why we're moving on to that.
Seeking grants to
Yes.
support future water projects.
Correct. Yep.
Including the towers.
Amongst other.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of water related
Yes. Well,
funding on the state level.
here's hoping it turns out to be an investment that
That's right.
bears fruit.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Michael, 404.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of claims dated December 11, 2023 for fiscal year 2024, covering checks numbers 109-333 to 109-492. From the general fund, $204,098.58. Special fund, $1,874.86. Water fund, $11,840.89. Capital fund, $77,186.50. Refuse fund, $9,545.84 for a total of $304,546.67. Payment of claims is attached.
Is there a second? Thankfully, a smaller number than last time.
Yes, indeed.
Comments, questions on the check register? All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. 405, back to you, Paul.
Whereas Pleasantville Lofts LLC applicant, owner and developer of property located at 70 Mall Plaza, Pleasantville, New York, shown on the Town of Mount Pleasant tax map as section 106.05, block 2, lot 31, received the subdivision and site plan approval from the Village of Pleasantville Planning Commission by resolution dated July 10, 2019. The resolution for the construction of 79 unit rental apartment buildings, the project. And whereas condition 21 of the resolution provides that prior to the issuance of first certificate of occupancy and or temporary certificate of occupancy for the project, Cooley Street must be improved as a two-way street connecting to both Bedford Road and Manville Road, and certain improvements must be made to the village-owned Cooley Street parking lot, all subject to review of the village board of trustees and all other necessary permits and approvals. And whereas the applicant has made significant progress toward the improvement of Cooley Street and the requisite permits from the New York State Department of Transportation are forthcoming to allow work to proceed in the coming months, weather dependent. And whereas the applicant has submitted to the village a performance bond guaranteeing the required public improvements. Now, therefore be resolved, the Village of Pleasantville Board of Trustees hereby determines in its sole discretion pursuant to the condition 21 of the resolution that based on the foregoing, the lack of completion of the above referenced Cooley Street and Cooley parking lot improvements shall not preclude the issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy for the project, provided that final certificate of occupancy shall not issue unless the above referenced improvements are complete, unless otherwise determined by the Board of Trustees. And be it further resolved that the village mayor is authorized to execute the agreement attached hereto concerning the Cooley parking lot improvements.
Is there a second?
Second.
So short version of long story is, as perhaps you have noticed, the Cooley Street improvements are substantially complete on both sides, but as is reported in this resolution, the final connection to Manville Road requires some state DOT approvals that have not yet been forthcoming. They are not believed to be in doubt, but they have been slow in coming.
They need a highway work permit in order to cut into Manville Road to connect the water line extension, which is a community benefit, and widen the roadway, which is currently being reviewed by DOT's permit engineer. We have every indication that it won't be a problem, but things do tend to take a while.
And now winter has arrived, that work can't happen until spring when the asphalt plant's open and all of that again. So I do encourage folks to take a look at what's going on there, because a significant piece of the improvements are already in place. Sidewalks and the like, we're gonna have brand new lighting in that area. Those units come in, January? So, really, I think a very significant improvement. So comments or questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 406, Nicole.
Whereas sealed bids were advertised in the official village newspaper and received on November 28, 2023 for on-call plumbing services, and whereas bids were received as per the following. From A. Borelli Mechanical, $2,412, from Grotto Plumbing, Inc., $2,650, from Roto-Rooter Plumbing and Heating, $4,815. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby awards the bid for on-call plumbing services to A. Borelli Mechanical for the period of January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, and the contract is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
Clear result, local business, all in favor? Aye, motion approved. Michael, 407.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the donation of 2 Pleasantville Music Festival tickets to the Pleasantville Recreation Department.
Is there a second?
Second.
That would be for the purpose of providing a bingo prize.
That is correct.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. We look forward to seeing whoever wins at the music festival. And are hopeful that they will be so excited about it that they'll bring a lot of friends who also need to buy tickets. 408, Paul.
Whereas the introductory local law 7 of 2023 has been introduced to amend chapter 173-24 and 173-68 of the Code of the Village of Pleasantville concerning loading zones. And whereas a public hearing concerning the introductory law local law 7 of 2023 was held and closed on December 11th, 2023. And now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby adopts local law 8 of 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is simply ratifying the matter we discussed in the public hearing. All in favor? Aye, motion approved. Nicole Thorne.
Whereas the Village Board of Trustees is concerned about the pedestrian safety conditions on the Sawmill River Parkway at Pleasant Avenue and Grant Street. And whereas this pedestrian grade crossing is heavily utilized by village residents, including children walking to school and commuters traveling to the Pleasantville Metro North train station. And whereas the village seeks safety enhancements at the pedestrian crossing by the New York State Department of Transportation and believes the implementation of a red light camera would be beneficial to pedestrian safety. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby requests that a red light camera be placed at the traffic signal located on the Sawmill River Parkway at Pleasant Avenue and Grant Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got an extra R in the third whereas, just a typo there. Comments, questions? We commented on this when we had a member of the public asking about various traffic and safety issues. All in favor? Aye, motion approved 410. Michael.
Whereas the parties entered into a license, is that how we're starting? Who are the parties here? Am I missing anything?
Let me see.
Well, why don't you read the title of it, which we wouldn't normally do?
Oh.
Yeah, because otherwise
The parties are.
the parties are not identified. right?
To consider authorizing the mayor or village administrator to execute the First Amendment to the license agreement with the Westchester County Department of Public Safety / Emergency Services concerning the replacement of existing antenna and related equipment at Pleasantville Police Headquarters. Whereas the parties entered into a license agreement dated December 4th, 2020, the license agreement wherein Westchester County agreed to furnish and install equipment to enhance the ability of first responders to safely and reliably communicate with the county and each other through the county systems for public safety radio communication and mutual aid purposes. And whereas the county has obtained additional funding through the statewide interoperable communications grant, the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, being contract number 197794. And whereas the county wishes to use the state grant agreement to purchase a tri-band antenna to replace the current single band VHF antenna at the municipality's police headquarters located at 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, 10570. And whereas the additional equipment will enable the police mutual aid radio system control station radio at the site to operate on the county's P25 trunked radio system, which is one of the newly installed county systems that operates on UHF frequencies. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village mayor or administrator to execute the First Amendment to the license agreement with the Westchester County Department of Public Safety and Emergency Services concerning the replacement of existing police antenna and related equipment at Pleasantville Police Headquarters. Attachments from Lieutenant Molman and the amendment agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is the matter we discussed in work session with Chief Presser, and we've discussed several other times. I think an important opportunity that has arisen out of a serious review countywide about the way in which interoperability of communications could be improved. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 411, Paul.
Consider authorizing the mayor or village administrator to execute intermunicipal agreement with Westchester County to provide mobile radios for police vehicles. Whereas pursuant to local law 13-2020, adopted by the County Board of Legislators on September 14, 2020, parties entered into an intermunicipal agreement, IMA, for the police mutual aid pursuant to the Mutual Aid and Rapid Response Plan, the plan. And whereas the county operates public safety radio communication systems for the County Department of Public Safety, DPS, the Department of Emergency Services, DES, the Department of Public Works and Transportation, DPWT, Beeline Transit Operations, as well as for the communication between the county and emergency first responders to Westchester County and the surrounding jurisdictions, the county radio systems. And whereas the municipality is in need of mobile radios for its municipal police vehicles program with the radio communication systems that will allow it to communicate with the county, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and other first responders for mutual aid purposes. And whereas the county wishes to furnish the mobile radios to the municipality for installation in its municipal police vehicles, and the municipality wishes to accept the mobile radios according to the terms set forth herein in the IMA. Now, therefore, be resolved that the village board of trustees hereby authorizes the village mayor or administrator to execute an inter-municipal agreement, IMA, to provide the mobile radios for the police vehicles.
Is there a second?
Second.
Again, another component of discussion with the chief in work session and in previous sessions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 412, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village mayor or village administrator to sign an updated lease agreement with the Pleasantville Community Television Incorporated, PCTV, to begin on June 1st, 2024 and expire May 31st, 2039. There's an updated contract attached. It should say authorizes the NAS.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this extends the agreement for the lease to 15 years, which was a requirement of some grants that PCTV is seeking, recognized per the terms of that lease agreement. It can be revoked by either party with a reasonable notice. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 413.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the creation of a capital account for the police department communication project in the amount of $230,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
The inevitable result of the previous resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. All 414.
Whereas on December 2022, the village board trustees allocated $720,000 of ARPA funds to the Manville Road Corridor Improvement Project, resolution number 2022-348. And whereas the village board of trustees seeks to fund $230,000 for a police communication upgrade project for the procurement and installation of communication equipment to the Pleasantville Police Department. Now therefore be resolved that the village board of trustees hereby authorizes a relocation of its $720,000 ARPA funding with $490,000 to the Manville Road Corridor Improvement Project and $230,000 to the Police Department Communication Upgrade Project.
Is there a second?
Second, there's a typo here too. It's missing two. And
Or where?
230,000.
Okay. ARPA funds are the COVID relief funds that were provided by the federal government.
Yes, correct. So we allocated it to Manville Road Project, because our grant with Manville is a reimbursable grant. We are finding that, the reimbursement comes rather quickly. We have enough cash flow to lay out the money and then receive it, so we can lower the amount of ARPA, allocated to the project.
Sounds good. All in favor? Aye, motion approved. 415. Michael, yes.
That's me. Yeah. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby accepts the resignation of James McDonald from the Planning Commission Architectural Review Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim, for your service. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 416, back to you, Paul. We're getting there. We're almost there.
Result, the board of trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Westchester County for land use records.
Is there a second?
Second.
Update of the longstanding agreement
Yep.
for the GIS system and, right?
Users, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Nicole, 417.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to enter into an agreement with StarNet Emergency Services to provide standby ambulance services on Saturday, July 13th, 2024 for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Missing a 2 there in the date, July 13, 204 should be 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
Straightforward. WEMS/StarNet has provided this service for us in the past. Somewhat different this year. But it's a reminder, Saturday, mark your calendar, Saturday, July 13. And this coming Saturday or the next one, you can come to the, as I mentioned earlier, you can come to the rec center and buy tickets in December Ticket Fest or buy them online at PleasantvilleMusicFestival.com. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Mike, the last one.
Resolved, that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a ticket web equipment use agreement for equipment related to the Pleasantville Music Festival expiring on December 8th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anything materially different, Eric, from what we've had in the past?
Same pricing as this year.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. That is the last of our resolutions tonight. Any further comment from the board or from a member of the public? There being none, is there a motion to close the public session and return to executive session regarding contractual and real property matters?
So we move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're heading into executive session. We will turn off our Zoom. We thank you for your attention, either now or in the future. You can watch this and previous meetings on demand at pctv76.org. As mentioned, it's the last of our full meetings in the year 2024. We have a brief meeting at noon on the 21st to pass necessary stuff and keep it moving. But in the meantime, happy holidays to all. Happy Hanukkah, which is ongoing right in the middle of it. Merry Christmas, whatever it is, your tradition or your holiday is. We look forward to what we hope will be a peaceful new year, consummation devoutly to be wished.
Indeed.
Good night. Thank you all.